Hey, have you heard about my AI alter ego? That's right. Ask Alan Anything is now live, and we've trained it on my 13 books. We've trained it on over 200 podcasts. It has most of what's in here, not everything, but most of what's in here. And you can, when you're sitting around going, gee, I wonder what Alan would do in this situation, or I wonder what Alan would say in this situation. Well, now you can. Go to whatwouldallansay.com. Enter the coupon code podcast because you're going to get half off. It starts at only $10 a month. And now when you're thinking, I wonder what Alan say, now you can actually ask. Go to whatwouldallansay.com, enter the coupon code podcast, and start asking me anything. Let's talk about a hidden heist. Ooh. Listen to this episode, see where I'm going. Welcome to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Berg. I'm a speaker, author, sales trainer, website reviewer, and I help businesses like yours sell more, profit more, and have more fun doing it. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's Alan Berg. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I am so happy to have my friend Bill Cates back on, this time to talk about his new book, The Hidden Heist. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Everybody loves a good heist, right?
Absolutely. And those of you that are listening, Bill just held up a copy of the book. You can find it. You'll see the link. You can go to thehiddenheist.com, or the links that are in the show notes over here. But I actually just listened to the book because that's what I do. I do. And I have to say, the narrator was great. I really thought that the intonation and all was really done well. But just give everybody just a little quick thing. What is The Hidden Heist?
So other than it being a book, what we mean by the hidden heist are the limiting beliefs, the mistaken assumptions, the unhelpful emotions, the story, often unconscious almost, that we tell ourselves about money and our relationship with money. And essentially that hidden heist of ours, that story of ours, is robbing our future selves, actually robbing our present selves to some degree. And so the book, we wrote this to help, number one, create awareness so people could figure out what is their hidden heist, what is their money story that may not be serving them as well as it could. And then some steps on how to start rewriting that a little bit, and some basic steps around creating not just financial stability, but financial dignity, financial freedom, which is a different definition to everybody, and ultimately, lasting wealth that we all are capable of creating and deserve.
Yeah, and I love the parable of the book. So it's not just the textbook, sit here, money stuff, because, a lot of us listening have heard, okay, you need to save money, you need to do this, don't pay high interest, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
But when it's done in the parable, it's a story, and there's people in there that everybody can relate to, right? People that are making good money, people not making good money,
Right.
And a bank manager who has a financial advisor because, yes, I oversee other people's money, but that doesn't mean I'm good with money. And for them to say that, and talking through the different stories, there are young people. I love, there was one part, and this, I started to tell you this offline. When my sons each got a job at 16, when they could have a job on the books, we opened Roth IRAs. So when each of them turned 16, Roth IRAs. And remember, at the bank, one of the guys was 30 years old, the guy at the bank, and said to my 16-year-old son, if you put away the maximum you're allowed for 10 years and then don't invest another dollar, he said, at 30, if I start today, I can never catch up to you because of the compounding of that money. And I was hoping my sons heard that. My older son probably did, because he's now the CFO of a company that powers the back end of crypto. My younger son, the graphic designer, maybe it didn't sink in quite as well.
It's time is the element there, and we often call that in financial services Mr. Early, Mr. Late, and it could be Mrs. or Ms. Yeah. But essentially, it is the factor of time. Warren Buffett calls compounding the eighth wonder of the world. Those who understand it earn it, those who don't pay it. Now, interesting, if you go on the internet and look up Albert Einstein, I should have said, Albert Einstein, you'll see all these memes, all this eighth wonder of the world. The truth is, there's no evidence that he actually said those words. However, the story, or the sentiment is true. Right, that when you have a little bit of discipline, and invest regularly, even if it's small amounts, over time you can amass $1 million or more. We have a guide actually that's called The Ordinary Millionaire, I'll just share that real quick. You just go to theordinarymillionaire.com and you can get that. And then on the other side of, the crippling nature of debt. So yeah, time's the big one. Time's the big one.
Yeah. When my older son got his job out of college, they offered him different retirement options. And I said, do 10% of your income. And he decided on a Roth 401k. And those
Yep.
of you that don't know, you're going to pay the taxes now, but you're never going to pay the taxes on the gains on that. I said, because you've not had this job before, this income before, you're not going to miss that 10% because you don't know what your net is. Now you'll get net and it'll be net of that. And I said, if
Right.
you do that for the rest of your working life, you will never worry about money in your retirement.
Well, it's the truth. Now I am going to quote Warren Buffett, and he says, "You want to, you spend what's left after saving, not save
Mhm.
what's left after spending."
Right,
The adage is pay yourself first.
right,
And I know that the folks that are listening, small business owners like us, small business owners, we put money back into the business. That's good. Nothing wrong with that.
right,
One of the biggest places to actually earn money and hit it big is in your own business. So I get that. And we can't just rely on that.
yeah,
COVID is one witness to that.
yeah,
Um, right? We build wealth through our business, but we also have to have other channels of building wealth. Um, it's a diversity of wealth building, really, if you think about it.
right. And a lot of people in the wedding and event industry, I'll have people come to me and say, I'm thinking about selling my business. And I say, okay, so what is the value of your business without you? And,
Yep.
solopreneurs, a lot of us are solopreneurs or small business people. You are the business. Everybody knows you. You have the relationships and all those. So a lot of people think that because they have gross sales of X or net sales of net income of X, that the business is worth something. But when you're not there, that's the thing. So if you're on vacation and you're earning money and it's not relying on you, you might have some value in a business to sell.
Yep.
But if
There you
that
go.
income stream turns off when you go away, there may not be anything to sell.
Right.
Yeah. So there were so many great stories in there. And the lessons, I loved how it was just subtly put in there about people talking about like the idea of compounding, the idea of the stories that we've been told, right? Whether it's from our parents or our grandparents. Some of us are our grandparents were Depression era, right? Some of us could be our parents, some of it could be our grandparents. My wife's grandmother, she would wave the tea bag over the hot water, then put it away to use it again later, because how many times could I get out of that? It's a different mentality, but a lot of us have been told things that aren't true, but might have been true for another generation, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, my parents grew up in the Depression, so they were very anxious, cautious about money. Now, my mom, well, she was anxious about everything, but and I probably picked up a lot of that anxiety. But one of her little isms was you never leave one job until you have the next job. And how I became an entrepreneur and bought and sold a couple businesses and all that, I couldn't tell you. I didn't get it from her. Um, but I got her anxiety, right?
Mm.
So that's sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's the message, sometimes it's their behavior, sometimes it's just the emotion that we get that stays with us, and that becomes our story. That's that hidden heist I'm talking about. My dad, we were a middle class family. My mother was a school teacher. My dad worked for the federal government. We were doing fine, not rich, doing okay.
Yeah.
A little bit of slack so we could take a vacation now and then. He saved well, but he didn't invest well.
Mm.
And so he missed a lot of opportunity. It wasn't until he was later in life and I started learning about money that I got him into a couple of mutual funds. It did very well for him. Um, Increased my inheritance a little bit, I suppose. Um,
Yeah.
but so we get all these messages. I mean, I've done about 100 interviews, money interviews, story interviews for the book, The Hidden Heist, and I'll tell you about Michael. Michael grew up in kind of a similar situation, middle class, but his father resented wealthy people. Always never had anything good to say about wealthy people, and so Mike picked up on that. And Mike starts a business, but Mike was struggling. And it wasn't after doing a little work and figuring things out that was part of it. It's like you can't become what you resent.
Right.
You can't become
Right.
what you despise. And so he had to do some work to get past that. Now he's done very well. So we get all that mess, and then the media piles on, and movies. I mean, here's one thing that bugs me. Look, are some wealthy people, especially the ones that show up in the news, often greedy and
Yeah.
dishonest and less than perfect character? Yeah, but they're the ones that are showing up in the news mostly because they probably did something that is,
Right.
not right. But when reporters talk about wealthy people, there's always this little hint of disdain or
Right.
filthy rich, is another expression you hear,
Right.
dirty
Right.
rich. And so in the book, my co-author Jeff West came up with a beautiful phrase, which is really a phrase for life, I think, for all of us. Stereotypes are there because usually there's a nugget of truth, right? Like, so are there some rich people that are greedy and not philanthropic and cheat and lie? And yeah, there. His phrase was, "Some are, most aren't."
Right.
And we also talked about the flip side of that, of poor people, oh, they're lazy, they don't want to work hard, they want a government handout. Well, yeah, some are, most aren't.
Right.
And so, becoming aware of this was huge for me because then it allowed me to start writing a new story. It starts with awareness. And that's what we wanted the
Yeah.
book to do, at least spark people's awareness of what is your story? What are you telling yourself on a regular basis? And I like to tell to people, don't believe everything you believe,
Right.
right? Because it could be based on some unproductive messages, or maybe messages that served you at one point but don't serve you anymore. So
Right. Or it's the social media, which is not real life. It's social media life. Yeah.
it's exactly.
I think about my mother-in-law. She's the daughter of the Depression era
Yep.
person who was very cautious with money, and she invests very cautiously. And I, like you, when I took over my dad's finances, I invested more aggressively for him than you would think for somebody who's 90 years old. I said, because I'm not investing for you. I'm investing for me because if there's anything left over, it comes to me and my sister. And I started thinking that way now. I told my wife, I said, we're not investing for us anymore. We're investing for the next generation. So if we can leave more for them, better, so we can take more risks. We'll be okay either way. We'll do that. But again, so many great lessons. But I love that because those stereotypes, it could be, Gen Z. Oh, Gen Z is lazy. Well, some are, most aren't.
I'm
Gen
sorry.
Y is some, right? I love that. I heard you repeated that through the book. It was great. And that again was so nice about the parable because it didn't feel like you were being lectured to. You were hearing
Yeah.
somebody talk about it and you go, yeah, I can relate to that. I think it was the doctor
Thank
who
you.
felt guilty, made good money but felt guilty, right? Or the bank manager felt guilty not being good about money and needed to hire an advisor who then, like you with Michael, did right by them by showing them, no, there's a better path for you. Just
and,
changing
and
mindset.
all of these, all the characters in the book are based on real people. So for instance, we interviewed a hostage negotiator. So by the way, for those of you who don't, I don't think it came out yet. This book takes
Yeah,
place in a bank robbery.
right.
So it's the first parable book I'd ever know that took place in a bank robbery, and it's so. And I wanted that because I wanted some tension. I wanted a mix of tension, and there's lots of comic relief. So there's lots of
Yep.
fun and humor in the book, and then the
Yep.
lessons along the way. And so while these bumbly robbers are trying to figure out how to get past SWAT because they didn't think they were going to get caught, and well, the SWAT person is based on a hostage negotiator we interviewed.
Okay.
Um, and then we interviewed several folks who were actually in a bank heist, in a bank robbery. And we share that in the vault. You can get, if you buy the book, you get access to the vault. And then I've done about 100, I've lost track, about 100 money story interviews. And so the characters in the book represent real people and their real
Mhm.
belief or what they were taught from their parents. And you mentioned the doctor who felt guilty. Uh, Shame is a thing around money. And I
Yeah.
interviewed a gal named Tammy Lally. I'm actually playing golf with her on Thursday. And her money talk, or her TED talk, sorry, has 2.3 million views. And it's about shame. And I didn't know shame was a thing around money. I knew about anxiety because I had that part, but I didn't know about the shame part. And what I do know about anxiety and fear and shame and stress, it knows no economic boundaries, meaning people from virtually no money to people with a ton of money have this baggage, this stuff, this
Yeah.
shame. I didn't earn this money. I inherited it, or whatever. So it's complicated. But here's one of the lessons I want people to get, Alan, is because money intersects every aspect of one's life. There isn't an aspect of your life that isn't touched by money in some form or way, or that when you change your money story, you can actually change your life
Yeah.
because it'll impact every aspect of your life. And yeah, so that's why we wrote the book, is to create awareness, and then we give some basics in there. um, I'm kind of the straight away guy. I'm the nonfiction writer. I've written 6 other nonfiction books like you have. um, but I had to have a co-author for this one, so that's Jeff C. West, and he's the parable guy, the fiction guy who brought the characters to life. And
Mm.
so even though the messages are coming out in the story, as you're saying, I was concerned. I was concerned that when people would get so engrossed in the good story, which it is, and I wanted to make sure this parable book was a good story because there's some bad ones out there. Um, I was afraid that they missed the lessons.
Mm.
So we put 3 appendices in there, and then we put access to a vault, which is really like more appendices, to make sure people got the message straight. So you get it through the fun, engaging story,
Right.
and then you get it straight. And one way or another, you're going to get it, is my thinking.
No, you will, and the whole idea of shame, but also jealousy, right? That you see
Yeah,
people,
envy, jealousy.
right?
Yeah, you bet.
I remember reading the book The Millionaire Next Door.
Yep,
The
Tom
millionaire next
Stanley.
door
Yep,
is not likely the person driving a Ferrari. It's the person driving a 2-year-old car, that a car they bought 2 years old, paid off, and they own their house outright. They might own local businesses. It might be
yep,
your local doctor or pharmacist or whoever. My
yep,
wife worked for a guy like this. He owned the Goodyear Tire and Auto Place, the towing place, the body shop, the Gold's Gym, residential and commercial real estate around town, and drove around in a Chevy stepside pickup truck in jeans and dirty boots. And you'd never know until he went home to his 8,000 square foot house with the indoor pool. And next door, he bought the piece of land to put up a 2-story garage for his car collection, right?
right.
but
Yeah,
but you look at him in town and you wouldn't give a second look because he didn't flaunt it that way. He might drive around in a fancy car once in a while, but is more likely a classic than
my
a new one.
my fa- my father, when I was growing up, there were no Lexus
Yeah,
and I guess BMWs and Mercedes were around, but not much. So was the Cadillac, right,
Cadillac.
or
Yeah,
the Lincoln.
right.
And my father didn't like it when people flaunted their wealth. And so, if anybody who drove a Cadillac, he called that conspicuous consumption, right? And it just so happens I have a Cadillac now. So sorry, Dad.
I wasn't going to say that, but I knew
Well,
that.
so here's something that happened to me, Alan. I think people appreciate this because a lot of people can relate to this, especially business owners and entrepreneurs types. I made the mistake of falling into the trap of having my net worth determine my self worth.
Mm,
And now the good news is it didn't overtake me. It didn't get me into trouble. So I paid myself first. I created my profit first funds. I created a profit sharing plan, a defined benefit plan. I did all the right things, and yet I still became aware of the fact that some of the decisions I made around money was to show other people how successful I am. Um, so, and look, did that hurt me? Nah. Is it good for me to know that? Yeah. Do I now am aware of that and maybe make some different buying decisions because of that? Yes. The problem is when you get in trouble with that, right? And you really start to try to prove something to other people or yourself that you're worth. I was measuring my self worth by square footage of my home. Not a good thing to do. And so I finally became aware of my money anxiety, and I started doing some work. And what is financial independence? Financial independence, there's a few ways to look at it, but one way is independence from those feelings, right? Independence from that I'm not enoughness, or I'm stressed around money, or I'm anxious around money. that's a psychological financial independence that I think is really healthy for all of us to work towards.
Yeah. And again, it's the comparison, keeping up with the Joneses. You
Yeah.
see somebody driving that fancy car, but it could be, hock to, they could be hocked to the
Oh,
eyeballs.
I see it. I've worked in financial services 33 years, and I see a lot of people, even some financial advisors that
Mm,
um don't you're right. You don't know what their true situation is. So that whole envy compare, you see that a lot in millennials. One of the things with the hidden heist, a lot of boomers and older Gen X's are buying the hidden heist for their millennial and Gen Z children
mhm.
to make sure they get the right messages early on.
Right.
And you're seeing it particularly with millennials. There's a lot of keeping up with. There's a lot of overspending on destination weddings, right? There's your business.
Yeah.
Destination, bridal
Vacations. Oh, yeah. Oh,
parties. My daughter took her.
bachelorette parties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she took her bachelorette party to Disney. I had to pay for her cousin to be able to go on that. And a lot of these kids get into debt to having to do that. And I didn't want that to happen to my niece. So, you see that a lot. And that comes from the media. It comes from, look, are there some truly wealthy individuals on social media flaunting wealth? Yeah. There's also a lot of charlatans. But here's the deal: if people aren't really learning how money works and the really good basic principles, as opposed to the stock of the day, the investment of the day, the crypto of the day, if
Mhm.
they're not learning the basics from you, the parent, or from a good book like The Hidden Heist and many other good books that are out there, where are they learning it? Well, they're learning it
Right.
from Instagram and TikTok, and may not be the best message or may not be the right message for them.
Right. Yeah, I was just listening to another book, and they said, maybe instead of teaching everybody trigonometry, they should teach them personal finance.
Well, amen, and it's starting to change. A lot of school systems are starting to do that. I used to joke that they teach us quadratic equations and all that, but the problem is with the personal finance thing, at least where it is right now, is a lot of times it's an elective.
Mm,
So someone who has an inclination wants to learn, they can learn. It's there, it's available, but it's not mandated. And I personally, while I have kind of a libertarian view towards a lot of things, I think our society would be a whole lot better off in the world in general if people did learn some personal finance and did learn about paying yourself first and dollar cost averaging and all the basics of
right.
saving and investing. Um, the world would really be a better place because
Yeah.
everyone's financial world would be lifted up just a little bit, and there'd be a little less stress and worry around that. And does money buy happiness? No. And when you're super stressed and anxious over money, it sure can, create misery. I just
And
saw a
yeah.
study that showed that money anxiety in the workplace. Now, this is not the entrepreneurs that we're dealing with, but we can probably still relate to this. Um, Causes an average of 7 hours of work loss per week. So, like 20% of the work week productivity is lost because the people come to work with money stress.
Mm,
So for you, the owner of a business, if you're the owner and you have employees, 1099 or W-2, help them with their money story.
yeah.
Help them with their money stress. I mean, don't overpay, pay competitively. Um, but then also just talk to them about the story and their thinking and their mindset. I've got folks that are owners of books of businesses that are buying the hidden heist to actually have a gentle way into this conversation with their employees. So so guess what? So we can alleviate some of that money stress.
Yeah.
And so people are more productive and maybe
Right.
a tad happier. So
Yeah. I remember when I was working for a company before, they had a little bit of a match on if you put money into the retirement plan.
right.
And a lot of the younger people didn't contribute. And I wasn't allowed to give direct advice. And I said, listen, I'm going to step outside and say, here, I'm just somebody but let me talk about free money. Like if your company is offering to match anything,
That is free money. You're
that is
absolutely right.
free money right now. Then
Yeah.
it's investing it wisely after that, which is the next part. But
Yep.
they're giving you free money and they couldn't see it. And I get it because again, I think we've all been there, or most of us have been there, where you live in, hand to mouth. right? There is no extra, but a little bit, a little bit, a little bit over time. And again, great lessons in there. I think by the way, I think where people are listening to this probably around the holidays, what a great gift to give someone is the knowledge of how to handle money better, because
Yeah, thank you.
that's going to pay dividends again and again. So again, if you're an employer, yeah, a nudge, somebody's having money worries, give them this as a gift, right? Give
Yeah,
them this as a
thank you.
gift because audiobook, Kindle, you know,
Paperback, hardcover.
paperback,
Yep.
all the different ways there.
Yep.
And because it's the parable, the story comes at you in a very, very natural way, and it doesn't feel again like you're getting hit with lessons. The
Mm.
bank manager, I'll give away this, is writing down the lessons on a pizza box in the
Yep.
vault. Okay, I'll
Yep.
just tell you
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But it's repeating the lesson. This is the lesson that we learned here. Here's what it is. And the fact that if you want to learn about it, again, there's ways to learn about money. And if you're not or you're not good, hiring somebody who's better at it, just like we hire a dentist, a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, because we need someone who knows that. Hiring a financial advisor. Just real quick for people, because there is different types. There, financial planner versus financial advisor. What's the difference?
Yeah, they're kind of overlapping terms in a sense that most financial advisors do some sort of planning these days. Some
Yeah.
do more robust planning than others.
Hmm.
Usually, you want to do a financial plan. You want to begin with the end in mind, at least a sense of the end in mind, so to
Right.
speak, or a sense of the future in mind. Uh, yeah, one phrase I heard from a colleague years ago is, "There's nothing worse than an unfunded dream." So maybe there's some dream you want, something you want to do someday, but if you don't set money aside to do it, well, it probably never going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Um, so now there are folks that are more investment managers. So there are a lot of financial advisors, if you will, that their main focus is investment management. So they're mostly focused on assets allocated in different investment vehicles for the purpose of creating a return on investment and eventually creating income in retirement.
Mhm.
Those folks tend to do a little less planning. Those folks tend to not be aware of the other side of proper financial planning, which is protection, which is insurance.
Mhm.
And now they often have relationships with specialists, so that may be okay. I usually recommend that when people are looking for an advisor, and I'm a huge advocate of getting professional assistance. Like you said, even the bank manager has. I know financial advisors who have financial advisors. It's the old, you can't see your picture if you're in the frame. Doctors, shouldn't be treating themselves in a lot of cases. Therapists, almost required to go in therapy.
Yeah.
They probably need it more than their patients. That's another conversation. Anyway, so did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well.
yeah. So anyway, the whole point here is to get someone who is well-rounded, or their team is well-rounded, so that you get planning, you get investment management, you get insurance planning, you get income planning, you get all of that. Uh, Now, with that said, you can't abdicate your responsibility. While yes, you will be leaving a lot up to them, you can even sign documentation that will allow them to move your money around as they think they need to do it in your best interest. And I've
Mhm.
done that with my advisor. Um, you're still responsible ultimately for this. And
Right.
so, if your advisor is doing something you don't understand, well, ask. And if you got somebody who gives you arrogant answers, then find someone else, right? So you should understand what's being done, at least to a certain degree. What's being
Yeah.
done, why it's being done, how that fits your goals, your risk tolerance, all that. So yeah, we get someone to help us, absolutely, but we don't abdicate responsibility for the results.
Yeah. Again, you want to understand that you're moving in the right direction, and that they are now. Which one is a fiduciary? Which one? Because you pay someone to manage your investments,
Yes.
right? You pay someone to help you with your financial planning, but it's different, right?
Yeah. Well, a fiduciary. Well, they're linked. But
Yeah.
the term fiduciary, you're hearing more and more about it. Essentially, what a fiduciary is someone who, and there are certain standards, set by the government regulation agencies, that the fiduciary has to always act in your best interest.
Right.
Right? They can never sell something because they're going to make an extra profit from it, etc. However, there are a lot of people that call themselves fiduciaries, but I question that. Here's the reason why. Because a financial advisor only knows what he or she knows. They only have availability for you of what they've learned and what they've been trained in and what they've been exposed to. So if they're limited in what they know, if they're working for a firm that has where they can only sell their proprietary, put you in their proprietary products, then well, yeah, they're working to your best interest, but limited.
Right.
Right. So yeah, the thing fiduciary is interesting term. But you know what? I would rather work with someone who calls themselves a fiduciary and says, I will only make decisions that are in your best interest than someone who doesn't use the term.
Right.
Right.
Right. And again, even if they're limited by that, they still have more knowledge than you do. And if you're working with someone that has your best interest in mind,
Yes.
you're still probably better off than trying to make it on your own.
And there are a lot
Uh,
of ways to get to where you want to go. And,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that's a
Yeah.
whole other 30-minute conversation at least.
Yeah. Yeah. My niece who started investing too late doesn't really understand it, doesn't want to understand it. Probably no matter how much I explain it, she's not going to get it. I just have her in an S&P 500 ETF. And I said, over time, I heard this recently. Somebody said, this week it looks like, over 5 years, it looks like a staircase. So it's going up, but it's jagged. Over 20 years, it looks like a straight line going up. And
So
as long as yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I say the stock market is like someone walking up a staircase with a yo-yo.
There you go.
It goes
There you go.
up and down, but I'll be
Yeah.
so the S&P 500 over the last 50 years has averaged 11.6%
Yeah.
return. And there are professional money managers who can't do that.
Right.
So a low cost ETF for your niece,
Right.
ideal.
Right. And that was
Can't go
another thing
wrong.
that I tried to explain about expense ratios, right? The expense ratio, like there's more than one ETF of the S&P 500, but the
Yes.
expense ratios vary and
Yes.
they're all theoretically investing the same way. So I have an ultra low expense one. I won't mention names because I'm not trying to endorse anybody here, but really, really low because any money that goes to expenses doesn't go to me and doesn't get compounding and all that kind of stuff. So again, this is a really important discussion. It's a great book for
Thank
yourself.
you.
It's a great book if you're in a relationship. Great book for your kids, grandkids. And again, I just thought the story came through so well because of the parable. I think your co-author there did a really great job with creating these characters that
Thank you.
everybody can relate to. The idea of it being in a bank heist and the bank robbers kind of being a little bumbling, but there's one you feel sorry for. And well, I'm not going to give it away because you have to read the story for that. But
But
so
he grows, the characters grow, which is also the
yes,
sign of a good book too. Good story.
exactly, exactly. No, I thought it was really well written. And
Thank you.
again, great book for a gift. Bill, thanks for sharing this. Look into the show notes. You'll see the hiddenheist.com. You'll see Bill's LinkedIn over there as well. If you go back into the archives for my podcast, you'll have Bill on talking about referrals because another really important part about the wedding and event industry is referrals. You see his
Yep.
book over his shoulder, Beyond Referrals. There, I have it on my bookshelf here as well. So, Bill, thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing this. And again, thanks for writing a great book.
My pleasure, Alan. It's always good to be with you.
Thanks. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wedding Business Solutions podcast. If you liked it, please subscribe to this channel and post a review on your chosen platform, Apple Podcasts or whichever one. If you have any questions about anything in this episode or any of my episodes, email me directly at alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com or visit my website, alanberg.com, alanberg.com. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests that you'd like to see, please again email me or visit my website. Thanks for listening.